So I want to take a moment and talking about your personal life when you're creating YouTube content, or really when you're creating any type of content. So if you're creating YouTube videos, if you're creating blog posts, any kind of that stuff, I want to talk about the concept of actually talking about your personal life and why I generally don't do it, and then why every once in a while I do. So this question has come up from one of my viewers in the past couple of days. I've talked a little bit about my personal life. I talked about my dog dying, and then I also talked about my stepfather dying. And so one of the viewers was like, uh-oh, is Eli okay? You're starting to talk about your personal life. What's going on here? And what I would argue is I am talking about personal stories, not necessarily my personal life. And I think this is an important distinction to understand, especially when you're going out there to create content, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is why you really shouldn't talk about your personal life whenever you're creating content. Now, the first reason why you shouldn't talk about your personal life generally is because, frankly, you're pretty boring. I'm boring, you're boring, everybody's boring, right? We seem exciting in our own minds, but the reality is when we go out there and we talk about ourselves, and we talk about ourselves in such a way, really all we're doing is talking about ourselves, that is not something that is generally interesting. Most people don't care about that. So you see this with a lot of the vloggers out there, you see this with a lot of bloggers out there, where they start to take their own opinions very seriously. They start to take themselves very seriously, and then they create this content. And the reality is the content just isn't very interesting at all. You read it, and they talk about what they think, and they talk about what they feel, and they talk about their opinions, and they talk about this, that, and the other thing about them, and you sit there and you're like, well, I'm not really reading this to learn about you. You're not Brad Pitt. You're not Angelina Jolie. You are not Bill Gates. I don't care about you. You're just some little pissant content creator. I care about the topics that you're supposed to be covering, not necessarily about you, right? You guys, when you guys watch me, you guys want to learn about Active Directory. You guys want to learn about little tips and tricks on how to make money. Don't really care so much about what's going on in my life, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. That's just a real thing. So one of the things you have to worry about whenever you're doing content creation is make sure you don't make it too personal, because frankly, you're boring. I'm boring. I travel around the world and do all kinds of amazing things, and let's face it, it's still pretty boring if all I do is sit here and just talk about myself. The other thing, the reason that I don't talk about my personal life very much within this environment is because the content that I'm creating here is for a relatively specific purpose. Again, all the content I create, whether it's the video classes or whether it's these vlogs, the idea is that I am trying to motivate you and teach you to get ahead in your tech career so that you can make more money, right? So you can go out there, you can create your consultancy, you can move up in the world, so on and so forth. Now, one of the issues that you run into whenever you talk about people's personal lives, especially with somebody like me, is we have a lot of different balls in the air. I have a lot of different balls in the air. You know, there is me, the geek, and there is me as all of these other things, right? You know, when you look at me and you look at why I have a house and all this stuff, there are multiple stories that come together to make that happen. So like if you walk into my house, again, like I say, I collect statues. So I have a number of temple grade Indian statues. Well, there's like a story behind that because one of my clients was actually an importer of Indian goods, and so I was able to get all these temple grade, like normally they would be exceedingly expensive statues, but I was able to get them at an exceedingly reasonable price because literally when my client went to India, he would just send me back pictures and say, which one do you want? And I went, that one. And he would put a tiny markup on a product that was made in India, which didn't cost much for them to make, and it would get sent over here. Well, the issue becomes is if you walk into my life and you see things, you see, you know, the house or statues or this or that or the other thing, it's very easy to convolute and to think that it all comes from things like technology. Like, You know, there are business transactions, there's all kinds of other stuff going on. And so one of the issues that you run into when you talk about your personal life, especially in an educational environment, is when you're trying to teach people how to get ahead, they can start to see other things and think that these other things relate to this, and then it kind of turns into a mess. You know what I'm saying? It's like all of these different things come together to make my life as it is now. And so I try to get you guys to focus just on the technology aspect, because that's really the only thing that I can offer you. I can offer you, you know, how to sell better. I can offer you how to market better. I can offer you how to learn things more efficiently. Some of the other stuff that go on in my life, you can't transfer in the same way. So that's one of the reasons I don't talk about the personal stuff, because it muddies the story that you're trying to tell. You know, all humans are very complicated creatures. We have a lot of different things going on. We have a lot of different relationships going on. You know, I'm a geek. I'm also a spouse. I also own corgis. I'm also a son. There's all of this stuff. And so when you start talking about too many things about your personal life, it makes the storyline of what you're trying to create for your content too confusing, and then it just kind of makes a mess out of everything. The final reason I don't talk about my personal life very much is, and again, especially in this modern world where people get overly connected to YouTube content creators, YouTube stars, and all that. And I don't want you guys to do that. I mean, one of the things you really have to realize in this modern world is somebody sitting here on a chair in one of their bedrooms literally can go out and talk to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. And so you end up being able to be seen by the same amount of people that TV stars used to be seen by. And the issue then is that people start fixating on you, just like they did with TV stars in the past and all that. You know, the whole thing of people thinking that you're their friends when you don't even know them. You know, the whole concern of people showing up at your doorstep and all of that kind of stuff. And so the less personal you can be, the less you have to run into those issues. Again, that's why I really have no interest in you guys seeing who my wife is, or any of that kind of stuff, because the more of that you show, you know, there's a certain small percentage of the population that just have a screw loose. It's just how it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if it's 0.01 or 0.001% of the population that has a screw loose, you know, you multiply that or by 454,000 people, and, you know, that's like 500 people with a screw loose that I'm talking to every day, right? And so if they start to feel like they're too familiar with you, that can start to cause real issues. So those are some of the reasons why I don't talk about the personal stuff. Again, you know, it really is true. I see this a lot with the bloggers and the vloggers and all these things, where they start to think that they are what's important. You know, you're coming here to watch me. I am the one that's important. And I try to make it very clear I'm not the one that's important. I can speak very clearly and concisely to explain concepts to you, but you're here for the concepts. You're here for the knowledge that I'm presenting. You stick around because I say it in a pleasing manner, but again, you really don't want to know a lot about my life. And then the other things, like I say, is you start to muddy the story with all these other personal things, and then people start fixating on you. So generally what I argue is that whenever you're creating content, whether it's a blog or vlog, YouTube or whatever else, you figure out what type of content you're trying to create. You basically figure out what story you're trying to tell, and then you just target that story. You just target that storyline and continue on that storyline and go from there. Don't let all this other stuff come in and just realize that nobody really cares about you. All right. Then, you know, questioning then comes up and says, well, what about, you know, you've been talking about your dog just died, or you just talked about your stepfather, you just talked about dieting, right? So why am I talking about those personal things in the vlog? If I just said I don't talk about my personal life, then why am I talking about my personal life? Well, the thing that the way that I think about it is because I'm not really telling you that much about my personal life. I'm telling you about very specific things that happened to me, and I think that it helps define the story better. Now, right now, I'm doing the whole series on the geek diet, right? So hopefully it's only 110 days. We'll see how long it goes. But every day I do a little vlog on my diet. I'm now up to day 10 on the whole idea of trying to lose, what, 31.4 pounds in 110 days. We'll see how it goes. It's 31.4 pounds. We'll see how long it goes. Now, the reason that I'm doing that, so you may be like, well, if you're vlogging every day, isn't that your personal life? The reason I'm doing that particular set of vlogs that way is because I see that weight loss or weight management is a huge issue in the tech industry. Again, if you want to make money, you know, the better you feel, the healthier you feel. The clearer your mind is, and the easier it is for you to make decisions, and also how people relate to you matter, right? So if you walk in and you feel good and your head is clear and the secretary looks at you and goes, you are cute, right? Your job gets a lot easier. The reality is again, our job isn't just about servers and MCSEs and all that kind of stuff. It's about human relationships. So the more you can relate to other people, the more other people can relate to you, the easier your life will go. So the problem is a lot of us, you know, we sit down a lot, we eat really crappy food, we have really crappy hours, and so we gain weight. And one of the issues is you know, how about losing weight? You know, losing weight's always a pain in the butt. So what I thought with doing this whole geek diet thing is that I would just do a vlog every day and to show you guys that yes, it's a pain in the ass. Right? Because a lot of people think, oh, some people it's easy to lose weight, but for me it's hard. And so why I decided to do that series was not to be personal, but more just to show, no, this is difficult. It is 110 days minimum to lose 31.4 pounds, and this is what it is like. So people can actually watch that and go, oh, look, you know, I'm on day 30, Eli's on day 30. Oh, look at this poor miserable, you know, watch Eli as he talks about whatever else. So that's why I decided to do the whole Geek Diet series, is the concept of basically that you can kind of walk along as I do this thing, because again, this is relevant. I talk about this a lot, that your tech career is much more than your MCSE or your CCNA. Now when it comes, like I said the other day, I talked about my father, my stepfather dying. I think it was at 43. Maybe it was 45. I keep trying to do the math. I thought he died at 43. It's like in my head I think it was 43, but when I do the math I think it was 45. But again, I'm not telling you guys about my relationship with my stepfather. I'm not telling you guys about all this other personal stuff. Why I bring up my stepfather is, especially as it relates to, because I was talking about it on the whole geek diet thing, is because, you know, we all have the quotes. We have these sayings that we say again and again and again and again that people relate to us. And so one of his sayings is, you know, when my mother used to make anything with tofu back in the 80s, you know, basically that, you know, he didn't want to eat any of that cardboard crap. Like, I remember when he would talk about, and he would say, I'd rather eat good food like this now and die a few years early than, you know, eat cardboard for the rest of my life. And so I was talking about this in relation to the whole diet thing and how he kicked off at 43 or 45 from a brain aneurysm because he was dealing with a lot of the issues that many middle-aged men do. He was coming out of his first career. Although he was making a lot of money, he didn't have the prestige he had. He was chain smoking because he wasn't feeling good. He was overeating because he wasn't feeling good. He wasn't getting his exercise, and then one day his blood vessel, brain aneurysm, right? And so that sounds like a very personal thing, but it just simply is one of the stories that in fact is part of my life. And so I'm explaining that to you guys to give you a real world example of this, because I get a lot I've been getting some pushback from people on this whole geek diet thing, like, oh my weight's fine, or oh whatever. And you're like, no, I mean, this is real. You know, so many of us we think, oh, I'm going to do whatever now, and I'll pay for it. Yeah, I'll pay for it when I'm 80. and to realize that's not necessarily the case. The other thing, you know, talking about my dog dying, the reason I talked about that with the whole geek diet thing was, one, being a little depressed after my dog died, and so I ate some extra food. But one of the things that I wanted to explain is on this whole geek diet thing is that you are going to have tragedy, you're going to have problems whenever you're trying to complete any goals, and the idea is that even when you get off track, just to remember what your goal is and then get back onto the path as soon as possible, right? Because a lot of people, you know, they get off track and they feel, oh, you know, I started eating bad food for a week or a few days, I guess I'm off my diet, I'm no longer doing what I'm doing. And it's like, no, 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 you can get off track for a day or two or a couple of days or even a week. Just remember what your track is. And so, you know, I was talking about Tex dying, not for any sympathy or any of that, but just to explain how this goes. I was also explaining, like with Tex dying, the idea that, you know, the thing about where startup ideas come from, because the question is, you know, if everybody is thinking about, you know, I want to create the next startup company, where do ideas come from? And so I was talking about the fact that now that Tonto is left, so we had two corgis, we had Tex and we had Tonto. Tonto fixated on Tex, and so I was talking about a dog dating service, and I was joking, you know, because I used to use dog dating as an insult for startup companies, but then I realized it's like now that Tex is dead and Tonto is very depressed, he's kind of sitting there and he's whining a little bit because, you know, he gets fixated to dogs. Like Tex got fixated to us, Tonto gets fixated to dogs. And so I was talking about, you know, that's where the idea for startup companies come from. It was like, hey, what if there was a really good dog dating app? Instead of paying $35 or whatever to send him off to doggy daycare, what if there was a dog dating app? So you could get your little dogs together and they could date and whatever else. And I was explaining that's where these kind of ideas come from. So that's my thought about sharing your personal life in content creation. And again, I would argue share educational stories, share your personal stories that explain your point of view without getting personal yourself. Again, as I say, like with my stepfather, not good or bad, but, you know, explain, you know, talking about, you know, seeing somebody in their 40s die without getting into all of, you know, the other stuff, if that makes any sense. So that's what I'm think there. That's where I think there. The big warning that I will give all you guys, though, because I see this a lot with a lot of the content creators, is just stay as much away from that personal life as possible. Because as soon as you start talking about you, as soon as you start making your content about you, like your opinions, that's when people get bored. That's when people flip you off, you know, click you off, and then nobody's watching. So why the hell are you creating content? You know what I'm saying? So those are my thoughts. So be careful with how you share your personal life. Again, yeah, for any of those people out there wondering why I'm sharing more of my personal life, please understand I'm not really trying to share my personal life if it's coming out that way. It's more simply telling some specific stories that I think will highlight or be instructional. Anyways, you get what I'm saying on what I'm trying to explain.